Hi everyone, the Newbury Award winner that I will be presenting on today is The One and Only Ivan by Katherine Applegate. The Newbury Award is awarded to children's literature books that the committee has deemed as having a large contribution to children's literature. Generally speaking, the Newbury Award is a pretty broad award, so it doesn't have a whole lot of restrictions and isn't based on like something super specific. Really the only major restriction is that the author must be a citizen of the United States. But other than that, you could really say that if a book is awarded with the Newbery Award, then it can generally be called one of the best books. Yeah, that's mainly what the Newbery Award is about. This book is written from the perspective of a resilient silverback gorilla who has been stuck in a mall circus for decades, and he was taken away from his family when he was young. Ivan is an artist. He loves to draw, he loves to paint, anything that has to do with art. There's a man named George, and he is the janitor for the mall, and he has a daughter named Julia, and every time that George comes to clean the mall at night, he brings Julia, and she brings Ivan all of these like art supplies and things so that he can bring out his artistic side. Mac was the owner of the mall, and he took Ivan under his wing when Ivan was a baby gorilla, and he actually raised him in his house until he became too big and too much, and then he put them in the mall circus. In the circus, Ivan had two best friends, and their names were Stella and Bob. Stella was an elderly elephant who had an injured foot. And Bob was a little dog who snuck into the mall circus every now and then. He snuck in and would stay the night with Ivan. But he didn't actually live in the circus. The first half of the book was mainly used to talk about like their lives in the circus and how they got there. One of the main parts of the beginning half was when Ruby was introduced. Ruby was brought to the circus by Mac. She was also taken away from her family. She was a baby elephant, and she was brought to the circus because the circus was not making enough money to stay open, and Mac was just trying to, get some new sights in so that people would start coming back to the circus. When Ruby first got there, Ruby and Stella became very close, obviously, because they're both elephants, and Stella hadn't seen another elephant in so long, and Ruby had just gotten taken from her family. She called Stella Aunt Stella. They just became really, really close from the very beginning. And the climax, or the middle of the book, I guess you could say, was marked with the passing of Stella. So Stella was an elderly elephant, and she just ended up passing away from old age. On top of the fact that with her injured foot, Mac was still getting her to do all these performances and these tricks and things, so she eventually just ended up passing away. And before she passed away, she made Ivan make her a promise saying that he would get Ruby out of the circus, and he would make sure that Ruby didn't have to live the same life that she did, because she knew that Ruby could have better. And Ivan committed to that promise, even though he had no idea how he was going to do it, but he did it for Stella. So one day Julia brought Ivan finger paint, and that sparked an idea in his mind where he thought about this big billboard that advertised the mall circus on the highway, and his thought was that he was going to make a big picture that was built up of different pieces of paper, so it was like a puzzle. And he painted this picture with finger paint for Stella, and it was a picture of Stella running with other elephants in the zoo, and it said home on it. And he did this and then got Julia to eventually hang it up on the billboard, and people started to see that she was stuck in the mall circus, and everybody started to, they were coming in. Mac was getting publicity, and eventually these camera crews started coming in, and caught on camera was a claw stick that Mac had been using to train Ruby, and was poking her with it when she wouldn't move and things like that, and it got caught on camera. And people saw it, and they started to protest outside of the mall, talking about, freeing Ivan and Ruby and getting them out of the circus. We're convinced that the animals were being treated badly. So then after that, Mac was inspected, and when he was inspected, the inspectors said that all of the animals were going to be taken out of the mall circus, and it was getting shut down. So then eventually Ivan and Ruby were both taken from the mall circus, and they were taken to the zoo, and of course they were upset because they had such a family dynamic, and Bob was back at the mall circus, and they didn't want to leave Bob, but they were excited for their new lives, so they were taken to the zoo, and after a while of getting acclimated to the zoo climate, they were released, and Ivan was able to see Ruby from his domain, and Ruby was happy. She was running with other elephants. All these amazing things were happening, and then eventually Julia and George came to visit them at the zoo and revealed that George now has a new job at the zoo, and Julia took Bob in as a pet. So all of these loose ends were tied up at the end. When they came to visit, Bob was with them, and Ivan fell in love with this other gorilla that was in his exhibit, and it was all tied up. So now I want to talk about how TCP, the one and only Ivan, is. So a lot of categories in the middle grade novel section of the TCP chart don't really apply because there aren't really any parents involved, but some of them do still apply. So one of them that can kind of apply with a little bit of a stretch is the goofiness factor of it. So I think in a way goofiness, you could say, drives the story because it is about talking animals and things like that. Some people wouldn't consider it that. It's just kind of a way to see it. And then the happy ending, like I said, pretty much all the loose ends were tied up. All of the animals were happy. They got to the zoo like what they wanted. And so I would say it definitely has a happy ending. With the conflicts, they can get a little bit confusing, and they did definitely become serious. It involved death. It involved, life or death situations and things like that. While Ivan was also there was external struggles with the death, and along with the fact that Ivan was internally struggling, trying to figure out how to get Ruby out of the zoo and worrying about not letting Stella down. There was concepts of learning grief and things like that. So I would definitely check that box. Another one is the safety. There's definitely an aspect of first touch of danger because pretty much in the whole story, Ivan got taken from his family, Ruby got taken from her family. So that's definitely a way of saying the first touch, they've experienced their first touch of danger because they were taken from their families. And then another one would be the common themes. The animals definitely question the rules by, getting these people to protest. That was Ivan's main goal with doing this whole billboard thing, and he achieved it, but he was doing outside of what he knew. He was questioning what he had always known from being a baby gorilla. And then, so I would decide that, so there's a little bit of under half of the TCP chart checked off. So I would say it's a little less on the TCP side, but not a whole lot towards the less TCP. You don't see a whole lot of middle grade novels like this, so I really appreciate this novel, and I think that it encompasses a lot of lessons that you can learn. All in all, I think that this is a little bit of a less TCP book, and I really enjoyed it. The one and only Ivan.